As we roll through here, Clint, I said, man, we're going to talk about this defense. And to me, I think the thought for it is who and what defense of the Texans is going to show up. Because, yes, hey, if that defense that went toe-to-toe and completely took out the L.A. Chargers to the tune of 4 turnovers and multiple sacks and pressuring and putting Justin Herbert on the ground, Danico Autry completely embarrassing that young man multiple times.
You're going to get hit hard if you play against
I'm sorry,
us.
I cannot get that in my mind. I've watched that about 15 times. Him just
Ragdoll.
fully press that young man and then just step over him like he wasn't nothing to get to the quarterback.
Treated him like Ty Lue.
Yeah, he did. He hit. Yeah, he sure did. He Iversoned his ass. Yeah. He physically threw him down and then Iversoned his ass. If that defense, which just took out the run game of the Chargers, and that's what they wanted to do, if that defense shows up, hell yeah. We've seen that defense before. We saw them tear up the Lions, 5 turnovers, and hold them down, even though they ended up losing that game. But we saw them hold down the Lions. We saw them tear up the Cowboys. We saw them give the Dolphins the business. We saw what they did to the Bills. But, Clint, as you know, we've also seen what they did to Will Levis. And Will Levis walked in here and made big plays that he has no damn business making big plays when that defense has the ability to do that. We saw, Clint, which I think may have been the toughest for you to deal with, what Mac Jones just did in the second half to this defense against the Jacksonville Jaguars. We've seen them kind of have some up and downs. We saw maybe Drake May in his first start get a little too frisky out there against this defense. Which defense is showing up? Because it's one thing if we could say they consistently give us outings like they did last week against the Chargers, but we've seen other things. That's my thing is which defense is showing up in this game on Saturday?
Well, I think the good defense, to answer the question just bluntly, I think the great defense. But here's you just got a lot of faith in DeMeco Ryans. And what has plagued the Texans this year defensively the most has been the explosive play. It's not like they've been consistently bad against football teams, right? So I feel like the way that DeMeco's been able to scheme things up with this personnel that's healthy right now, I think one thing that I'd be comfortable betting on is that Pat Mahomes not going to be able to sit back there and pat the football and throw the ball over the top of the defense. Now, he is surgical underneath, and I fully expect Pat Mahomes to get the ball out of his hand. I expect the screen game to be really good. I expect him to have great chemistry with multiple receivers, but damn sure Travis Kelce and keep drives alive.
Oh, thank you.
But no problem, Pat. I would be really surprised if we go out there and all of a sudden with this defense, the explosives are a problem the way that they've been a problem in a handful of games this year.
Because of this particular team they're playing, or you think they've –
Well, I just think DeMeco will have them ready. I think they figured some of that stuff out. I think both of your corners are playing significantly better ball than they were. I think your defense from a pressure perspective is at least according to last week, they're hitting on all cylinders and playing better than they have in a long time. I think you get – I don't know about the team, but I do think you get a better DeMeco, the defensive coordinator, in the playoffs. And so I just – again, I don't know how comfortable I am with this confidence, but I give up an explosive or a couple of explosives or a touchdown over the top, sure, maybe. But we've seen those things just like it didn't have to be. The only reason they were even in the game is because they were throwing the ball over the top of the defense's head. The only reason they had no business being in that game, and I would be shocked if it were one of those kind of games. So, I feel like we're going to get the good defense. Now, what does that defense look like against one of the greatest play callers, if not the greatest play caller of all time?
Because I want you to do this with your background. You know what it is. Because what we saw last week was, as I said, Danico Autry embarrassing people. Will Anderson just coming off the edge untouched, and he almost killed Justin Herbert. We saw Daniil Hunter. We saw that line take over the game. What is it that you think Andy Reid, as a great play caller, a guy that is smart, because clearly in the first game, we've not really seen the Texans D-line be slowed up, especially the edges. the way they were. Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson had very little impact in that game. What is it that Andy does that you think makes it different than what the Chargers do?
Well, I think it starts with his personnel. I mean, you've got 3 interior offensive linemen. Now, I know Tooney's not playing interior, but you got 3 dudes in that O-line that ain't gave up a sack all year. I mean, you've got a stout interior offensive line, and when you have that, your quarterback can move. Your coordinator has a chance to chip and play games with the defensive ends. And if you look at last week, how this defense was just so nasty. The interior guys were able to make big time differences. We made a lot during the week about the tackles for the Chargers, but the reality of it is down to the interior offensive line was trash. The Texans were able to take full advantage of that. You had a quarterback that was not willing to use his legs, which most of us thought, at least I thought he was going to use his legs
or hit a check down.
Yeah, or hit a check down. That's where I was going next. And you had a young quarterback that just doesn't quite understand how to handle the level of pressure that was being thrown at him last week. All of which, by the way, what I just said, I do not think exists this week with the Chiefs, obviously. Again, internally, I think they're going to be able to handle our internal pass rush, which means that our good outside, our big guys outside have to win versus their tackles, which is not going to be easy. And D'Amico's got to scheme some things up to catch Pat off guard. There's got to be some big-time disguises. And the reality of it is, I think Andy and Pat, I do wonder – we're going to have this Brady-Belichick conversation at some point about Andy and Pat. Like, obviously they're great together, but I do wonder how much of Andy is true scheme versus Pat just committing to it and understanding how to execute it and not taking a bunch of risk and getting the ball out quick and that kind of thing. Either way you slice it, we got to deal with both of them, no matter who gets the credit. But I think that Andy's got and Pat have a real understanding of now, Pat will make some stupid mistakes, which I know drives you crazy, making some ill-advised throws and stuff like that. But when it comes down to an overall game plan and approach to an offense, they're not going to get beat because their game plan wasn't worth a damn. It's just not going to happen. And so Andy's going to make it tough on his defense from a scheme perspective, and their personnel is significantly better, particularly on the inside of the offensive line, than what the Texans saw last week. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you could get a sense, and it felt like kind of rewatching that game the first time. Boy, everything was so quick, so many misdirection things, and it just frustrated. You could see it frustrated. It was like, hey, man, we took our first 2 steps on the pass rush, and the ball's gone. Yeah. Or they moved the pocket, or there's a jet sweep out of nowhere that comes out. So
yeah, well, when you get a team like the Texans who are we've heard them talking about up front just being penetrators, right? Well, when you're going to run right by runs on that, right? Andy's not going to sit up there and butt his head against with certain schemes against a penetrating defense. He's going to pick whichever scheme is really good against a penetrating defense. Luckily, last week the Texans figured out that trap play that Baltimore just murdered us with, because that's what the Chargers tried to do, and it didn't work. It worked good in the first drive, but it didn't work real good down the stretch. And so, Andy's just take that for instance. Like, Andy's really good at figuring out ways to counter a penetrating defense. And really any kind of defense, but in this case, that penetrating defense. So I think he's going to, whether it's misdirection, like you said, we got some guys that chase like scalded dogs, right? Are they going the misdirection stuff is going to be there. The speed sweep, getting the edge quick is really the only way you're going to get the edge with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson out there. So he's going to have that in the game plan. Instead of just giving up on the edge, he's going to find creative ways to get the edge right now immediately, instead of trying to do it in the run game with your traditional runs. And so, look, Andy is, they know that, if not best play caller that we've seen, and so he'll have a nice little setup for D'Amico.
But to me, when as you're talking about that, like, those are the names that from a Texans fan's perspective, you need to hear a lot more of than you did the first go around. Like, and I don't think it's all up to them. I think some of it is design, and D'Amico has to do it. But Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson are arguably the best defensive end edge rush duo in football. They have the most sacks of any duo, and in the first game they just didn't impact it very much, and they've got to find ways to do that, and in this game they have got to be more of a factor in this game. Like, I do think there's going to be some quick stuff, but as we heard from Matt Nagy, the offensive coordinator earlier this week with the Chiefs, said at some point we're going to have our guys go one-on-one in matchups. And there are going to be some longer drops, maybe not as many. There are going to be some. The Texans need those guys to step in and make plays and be a big impact in those points. Because if this game goes any way like it did last time in terms of those guys' impact, they are in some real trouble. Well, those guys got to come through.
If I remember correctly, they allowed Pat for the most part to get the football out of his hand pretty quick. Now whether that's design or that's Pat or it's Andy or whatever, the reality of it is DeMeco, I would imagine from jump, instead of coming out and like, hey, let's see how the game goes and get the feel of the game and we'll adjust accordingly, I would imagine DeMeco's going to come out there with let's take away the majority of the quick stuff. Let's make that a priority. Make him hold the football and see if we can't get him behind the chains. Take a little bit more risk. Now, he may hit him over the head. He may hit him over the top for an early touchdown. But again, I just think they've got to live and die with that pressure, Ron. I don't know how the Texans win if they're not applying pressure.
Yeah. On the text line, Frank said you're going to see that Super Bowl caliber defense in tomorrow's game. Well, that is most definitely what they need to see. More like last week and less like the Tennessee and Jacksonville weeks. I know for you, and I believe this as well, that DeMeco Ryans, one thing I've said it for years, he is, to me, a top 5 defensive mind in the game. And he has got some advantages of seeing this team before and have tape on this team. Now obviously Andy Reid has the same and can completely have a different game plan, but he's understood what they tried to do to him before, and I think with his mind, DeMeco will make adjustments in this game, and that's the thing that I'm curious to see in this game is what kind of adjustments that DeMeco makes.
Yeah, and look, I agree. DeMeco's been great with the adjustments. I think, there's a couple of things with DeMeco's defense that you just can't ignore, right? I mean, the +10 turnover ratio in a time when CJ – it's not like CJ's out there throwing 4 interceptions, right, like Justin Herbert had 3 coming into the game. I mean, CJ's thrown a handful of interceptions, and they're still +10 in the turnover ratio. In the pressure rate, I mean, they're pressuring quarterbacks at a rate second to nobody in the league. The ability to and I don't know exactly what the number is right now, but the ability to allow the lowest completion percentage in football, and that's been a stat since mid-year. It's not like it just happened with a couple of bad quarterbacks. I mean, it's been the issue all. Like, those are all things that I would have those are things that Andy and Pat got to deal with. Those are things that the Chiefs aren't immune to. So I think those are real. And along with your point, you look at DeMeco, his ability to adjust. Hey, this ain't working. What are we going to do? I think he's really, really good there as well. So we'll see how it goes. But I think there's some real positives to sink your teeth into on this Texans defense.
I think he's going to be super aggressive. I think
DeMeco?
I think he probably – we won't see him sit back more. I think he may send more pressure. I think we may see one of those games, which is dangerous, as you know, the blitzing, especially blitzing of him. But I think at least he'll pick points where he's going to be more aggressive and try to kind of speed up Mahomes.
I would think there's going to be a lot of post-snap movement. I mean, that's the only way you got a chance against a guy like Pat Mahomes is to show him something pre-snap and then immediately roll to something else. And now that could just be something as simple as, hey, we're going to play man defense, but we're going to show you our corners are 8 yards off and appear in the bell, and at the snap they're going to jump anything underneath. Or it could be completely disguising coverages and going from a two safety coverage, two on the roof coverage to a single high safety. So I would expect them to empty the clip against the Chiefs, at least early on until they.
You like that thought against?
Look, I like it against anybody. It's just, I mean, it is just significantly more difficult for a quarterback to process and work post snap. I mean, it's. I said it the other day, I think CJ struggles with it right now. And look, Pat's obviously better than most at it, but the reality of it is you got to make him process, you got to make him see rotation, you got to make him confirm, right? Pre-snap, I've got a certain kind of look. If he can just go off a pre-snap read, then you have zero chance against Pat Mahomes. right? But as the ball snapped, again, it could be something as simple as the corners are jumping or the safeties are rolling. You got to consistently mix that
Change
thing
the
up.
pitcher,
and a lot of times defenses can get themselves in trouble doing that. And D'Amico's group, I think they did that last week in that first drive against Herbert. Like, there were guys out of position, and it didn't bite them for the big play, but there were guys out of position trying to figure out where the hell to be, and then they settled in and did a really good job moving forward. But that's the balancing act there, in my opinion, Ron, is you got to, you can disguise yourself into some problems versus Pat Mahomes, but you can also, if you do it right and you're good at it and you're confident in it, then you can maybe get an early pick, maybe get an early third down breakup, get a punt, and have good field position out of the gate kind of thing.
Get some confidence, yeah.
Yeah, which again, you talk about the first meeting this year, that's what you did for the Chiefs, right? You gave that to the Chiefs immediately with the interception on the first or second drive.
Then led right to a touchdown.
Yeah, so I mean, you gave that advantage to them last week, and can the defense do that for our offense this week and give us a little bit of an advantage? Those kind of situations are what it's going to take to get this one.
All right.